Привет.
Как жизнь?
Нормально. Я только что, если что, запустил стрим, вот прямо сейчас. Привет.
Стрим. Что ты именно стримишь? Дискорд?
Нет, ну свой экран. Привет, Андрей.
Да-да, привет. А как у вас там дела? Джон что-то писал, нет?
Нет, вроде.
А ты ему что-то писал?
Нет. Он оффлайн.
Ну, ладно, можно тогда так начать, можно ему написать, но самое главное, запускайте стрим, будем
Андрей,
уже...
скинь мне ссылку на турнир, пожалуйста.
А мы как в прошлый раз не можем? Я не могу просто застримить.
Можно как в прошлый раз записать его и отправить потом на YouTube канал, как уже следующий,
Так нет, стрим же готов, зачем на запись делать?
запись, чтобы потом можно было посмотреть запись как бы после турнира.
Ну, она сохранится, в смысле, но сейчас стрим будет?
Ну, сейчас стрим, а потом выложим это на YouTube тогда.
Да, ну...
Кирилл, а мы через тебя стримим? Я же могу просто через Twitch.
Да, давай тогда просто у себя в таком случае.
Чтобы тебя не дергать, чтобы я мог управлять партиями, там двигать.
Окей. Можно так сделать, да.
Нет,
Сейчас я быстренько все открою, там ОБС и всякие.
А что с трансляцией на Ютубе? Отменять?
А ты можешь ретранслировать мой Twitch?
Да, как вариант.
Трансляции?
Нет, а там же как-то... Ну да, наверное. А я, честно, не знаю, там нельзя напрямую как-то... Ну да, наверное, нельзя. У меня, смотри, у меня даже готовы это самое, логотипы там всякие.
А я хотел сказать...
С прошлого раза сохранилось.
Я сейчас скину ссылку вот беседы и канадцам. Это ну, на английском языке нужно комментировать.
Но мне начинать час или, ну скажи, когда?
Ну вот, да, я сейчас желаю удачи уже и выключаю микрофон, можно начинать.
Okay, hello everyone watching. Today we are broadcasting the tournament, the like revenge match between the University of Toronto and MIPT. I am FIDE Master Arman Geivondian. Today I'll be commentating everything that's happening on the board. So we have some issues with like the engine, so we can't go backwards through the game, so we'll play some kind of like a guessing game and try to like evaluate the position that we are starting from. The stream is a little bit delayed, so the games are already 15 minutes on. So let's watch the first game. So as we can see, there's a material equality. So white is castled queen side, black is castled king side, and so white already played g4, showing some initiative and trying to, you know, start some sort of attack. What about pawn structure? White have doubled pawns on the c file. They are not very weak right now, but this may black can make it count in the end games. Also black's bishops are placed very well, especially the f6 bishop, so maybe that's why white's trying to force him away by playing g5. For me, I'm not sure how to evaluate this position. I think I would prefer to play for black here. So what about some threats? I think maybe black can just play. So if we are looking for some tactical way, maybe black can try like, you know, g6, then to keep the bishop on the a1 h8 diagonal, so g5 would be met by bishop g7, and then some threats like knight a4 and c5 can become real. But I think it's quite you know, difficult to make such move like g6, and this may not be strong because this gives white better opportunities to attack and to open some files on the king side by playing like h4, h5. So this is more of like a tactical approach. Also black can just play b5, and yeah, maybe b5 is just very good. So if white takes, c takes b5, so the a file opens, and this is not looking good for white. But maybe b5 can be met by, like, I don't know, knight takes e6, and you know, the c4 pawn will be defended in this case. Maybe white can make something with his two bishops. Black played h6, by the way. I don't like this move because now white's attack becomes much more real than it was, because now if white managed to move the pawn from h3 to h4, the g5 threat is very dangerous for black, because one of the files will open, or otherwise if black plays h5, it can be met by g6, for example. So I think if black decides to weaken his king side, a better way was to play g6, not h6. King b1 is a prophylactical move, so white is defending from the potential bishop g5. For example, if we sacrifice the bishop on h6, g takes h6, queen takes h6, it would be met by simply bishop g5 check. And now, well, it's still not a threat, but for example, white can go for h4, bishop takes h4, bishop takes h6, g takes h6, queen takes h6, and black will be forced to play, I think, bishop f6, and maybe it's not too dangerous right now, but this threat may become more serious after some moves. So now I think after the h6 move the position is slightly equal. I would maybe even prefer to play for white now. So let's move on to the second game. Now we see that a lot of action already happened in this one. Once again it's a material equality, but the position is looking very difficult for black. The only issue for white is that knight on h5 is placed very poorly and has nowhere to go, and if black managed to put some pressure on this piece, he can even have some advantage. Also the f3 square is weak, so maybe some ideas like, I don't know, knight e2, knight f3 maybe. I think black can consider something like bishop g6 with the threat of like queen e8, and this could be met by, maybe this could be met by rook takes c6, and now rook takes a6, e6, bishop takes h5, and we have some complications, but I think that it's good for black, because white may be forced to play rook takes e8, bishop takes g4, and if white plays rook takes a8, rook takes a8, f3, it maybe can be met by knight d2, I think. Well, it's a very difficult position, so let's see what happens. And now I'll just move on to another game. Well, king on e2 is misplaced, but maybe white has something for it. Yes, he has. White has a minor piece for one pawn, but black's attack looks promising, to be honest. Some ideas like bishop a6 maybe. No threats right here, right now though, so maybe it's not as serious as it looks. For example, white maybe can just play, well, maybe just play rook takes a5, I don't know. Rook takes a5, rook takes a5, b takes a5. I think now black would consider bishop a6. With maybe an idea of queen e4 and knight takes f4 check then, but maybe it's too slow. Once again, a very difficult position, hard to be evaluated. I think if white plays all the perfect moves, white should win this game. Also, maybe white has some resources like queen d2, and then with the idea of king f2, and now the knight on d3 is not pinned, and also there are some threats like, I know, knight c5. Well, let's just see what happens and move on to another game. So what we got here, once again, material equality. So black has an open b file, maybe some ideas like a5, a4, or maybe c4 in some like endgame future. The bishop on black has two bishops advantage, but the bishop on f5 is can be attacked and is not safe right now, but can be attacked in some possible way now, because knight h4 would be met by bishop takes h4. So black has time to play h6 and save the bishop. Now pawn on a6 is attacked though. Maybe black just plays a5. a5 though can be met by queen a6. Surprisingly, black decides just not to defend the pawn at all, play h5. h4 is a threat though, so white can't play queen takes a6. So maybe I have to play h3 to defend on the threat. h5 is a good move because also it creates space for bishop to go away on h7 if needed. Also some ideas like g5, g4. The king on e8 is relatively safe. This is typical for this kind of structures, because the pawn on e5 is blocked by a knight on e6 that is placed very well, and the pawn on e5 blocks like bishop, knight on f3 and queen on e2, so it blocks the e file. So it's very difficult for white to create some real threats to the king. If black managed to safely defend the a6 pawn, like maybe even playing rook b6 for example, there are no ways for white to create some threats in some short term. Well, maybe some action happened in other games. Go back to the first game. Yeah, a lot of action happened here, and black played bishop takes the f3. White of course can take because rook on g5 is attacked, so white will have to move the rook away and black will have an extra pawn, but the king is not really looking safe on black side, so there is some compensation for sure for white. Maybe even white's position is better here. Black is desperate to make some exchanges. Rook d4 is a blunder. Rook e1 wins the game now. That's just a blunder. White had to play rook c1. Now just loses the game after rook e1 check. Yeah, it could be a really interesting game, but now it just ends here. After rook c1, the possible consequences were, I don't know, bishop c6 maybe, bishop d3, rook then goes to g1 after this. Black maybe will be forced to play g6 and it could be already met by h4, h5, so white's position was promising. But now white, resigned. So let's move on to other games. So what happened here? Black decided to play, well, I don't remember position very well. I think black played rook b8 and now white decides to take on e4. Well, this is an interesting decision, but now I am really scared for the h5 knight. So that's the problem that white has to solve. How to save this minor piece. The pawn on b2 is attacked, the pawn on d4 is also attacked. So yeah, a lot of weaknesses in white's position. Black's king is not safe though. And black can't really take the d4 pawn because of queen takes g5. Not really a good exchange for black. So the only threat is the b2 pawn. And this is not very serious once again. Maybe white can consider rook c5, for example. Can be met by likes of h6 maybe. But white can also react with h4. Very complicated dynamic position. The evaluation is very hard here once again. So let's watch some other games now. Yeah, white played rook takes a5 as I expected, and after the exchange, black played queen e4, queen d2, and now g5. So black decided not to play. Black preferred g5 over bishop h6 because maybe he thought that bishop a6 will be met by king f2, and white looks like successfully defended from all the threats, and g5 is very strong because now white can play g3, can't take on g5 also because of like f4. So maybe the only option here is to play king f2. But after king f2, black, I don't really see some continuation for black. I think white will finally defend from all the threats, and with an extra minor piece, it's an easy victory. Black has a g file though, but I think it's not enough here, because the time is very limited. After white plays king f2, the next move is bishop e2, and if white has opportunity to play bishop e2, then after bishop f3, there's obviously no more chances for black. So maybe king f2 should be met by rook g8, something like this. I think after rook g8, white still can play f takes g5 because of f4. But has a lot of some other promising moves, like rook g1, for example. Easy as that. Well, at least black maybe will eat the e5 pawn, but even this is not a done deal because of the bishop takes f4 move instead of knight takes f4. So concluding all this, I would say that black's compensation is not enough here. By the way, after the king f2 move, there is no more bishop a6 move anytime soon because of knight c5. So black has an advantage, I think. Oh, but white has an advantage, I think, but white decides to play knight c5. That's surprising, because now there is a knight takes a4 move, and after king f2 there is a knight h3 check. Maybe white missed that. Well, for me it's still not enough. Even after this, if white just plays g takes h3, queen takes h1, I think overall white's position is still better, because you know, for example, white can play, I don't know, bishop g2, or maybe just a6, for example, trapping the queen. So queen will take on h2, yeah, that's true, but white will just play bishop g2 and try to like to use this moment when queen is trapped on h1. Oh, but not a6, I think. Maybe knight h3 check, g takes h3, queen takes h1, and now bishop takes g5. But black, yeah, decided not to play knight h3 check, but just to take the e5 pawn. And white played a6, played it very fast. I'm not really sure that this move was this obvious and this good. I would rather play something like queen d4. I think queen d4 was better because after the exchange of the queens, there is no more question about the result of this game. So black would be forced to play queen takes d4, or maybe knight g6 with the same result. So it will be met like by queen takes d4, bishop takes d4, some move for black, and then a6. And a7 is a very strong threat. I think black maybe even has to play bishop takes a6, and with two extra minor pieces, it's a done deal. Maybe it is still pretty much easy victory for white even after a6 move. Well, let's wait and see. Go to for the game. Well, so black managed in this game. Black managed to make a lot of progress in his attacking play. So white was forced to play king h1, knight g1, so a passive defense. And now with knight on g1 that's placed very badly because has no places to go, black decided to convert this dynamical advantage by opening the game playing d4. That looks strategically very correct. Yeah, white plays queen takes a6, giving up the c3 pawn. Interesting decision. I would maybe consider c takes d4 and then queen takes a6, because for me b takes c3 is a very dangerous move. So the pawn on c3 may be quite strong, because it can at least go to c2 and be defended by the 5 bishop. Also, all these checks like queen c6 or queen a4 gives white nothing, because king will just go to f8 and will be absolutely safe. White also can never play h takes g4, of course, because of the opening of h file, and also knight on g1 can't really go anywhere because he has to protect the h3 pawn. So overall this position is very bad for white. So let's go back to the first game. First game, excuse me, the first game white already lost. So the second game. Yeah, black decided to play queen takes yeah, white plays rook c5, I think that's the correct move. Black decided to play queen takes d4, giving up the g5 pawn. Maybe I thought that h6 doesn't make any sense because of h4. Fair enough. So now white thinks with which piece to take the g5 pawn. Rook takes g5 or queen takes g5. The good thing about the queen takes g5 move is that now there is a threat like rook e5 blocking the queen and creating the queen g5, queen g7 checkmate threat, and queen d7 could be met by rook takes e6, for example. Oh no, it can't be because of bishop takes h5. Yeah, this position is really complicated, and it's still a material equality here. If it ends up in an end game, I think knight would really dominate the bishop, even if black managed to take the b2 pawn, because of the awful pawn structure and the weak dark squares. There is a lot of tactics here. What black can even consider rook takes f2, rook takes f2, rook takes b2, but it of course is not working because of queen f4, and queen takes c5 will be met by queen f6 check and queen g7. A very difficult position. There is some move like e3 here, speculating on the fact that the h5 knight is under attack, but black decided to just play knight takes h5, queen takes h5, and now maybe we'll just take the b2 pawn and attack the f2 square. Yeah, that's looking good. But I think white can just play queen e5 check if he is fine to make a draw, because you know, black will have some extra pawns, but I think overall it's a rook end game, so it's always a draw, you know. And also the king is positioned very bad for black, because it can be cut of the 7th rank by rook e7, I mean, rook takes b2, queen e5 check, queen takes e5, rook takes e5, and if, for example, black plays rook takes a2, we play rook takes e6, and the black's king is in trouble. So if white has an opportunity, he will likely play rook e7, maybe try to, you know, just put the rook to the back of the c pawn, like rook c7 or rook c6, if black straight plays c5. Also the e pawn is attacked. I think overall it's quite a safe draw for white. So let's once again go to the third game. Black resigned here. So black just played knight f4. Oh, not knight f4, not knight f4. Black played queen c7 and white played a7, and black resigned because queen takes a7 will be met by knight takes e6, and obviously there is no compensation in this position, so black decided not to waste time, straight resign. So in the fourth game, black took on c3, white played knight c4, black played h4, now bishop h2. Well, h4 is a questionable move if there is some straight tactics here, because now white has a golden opportunity to play h takes g4, which wasn't possible when the pawn was on h5. So black has to do something quick to make it count. Just decides to play g takes h3. I don't like this, to be honest. Oh no, I understand the idea. The idea is that if white takes on h3, now black will play bishop takes h3, and the idea is that g takes h3 will be met by queen d5 check, white will be forced to play f3 and all this, but it's not going to work because white can just play knight takes h3 and bishop takes h3, and now there is a move queen c6 check. King goes to f8, we play g takes h3, and no more queen d5 check. So the king is relatively safe for white, and also the white's squared bishop is exchanged, and now the pawn on c3 is not as safe on c2 and likely will be eaten. And you know, from the strategical perspective, like the pawn structure and all this stuff, white's position is even better than black's. So black has to look for some dynamic, and it's not what he's doing right now. So in the second game, black played e3, as I thought. But I think that it's not the perfect way to do this, because it was stronger to play e3 a move before, because there was an additional tactical motive of the knight on h5 being attacked by the bishop. Now it may be still strong, but I don't think that it gives black some real, I don't know, advantage. It depends on what black is looking for in this position. There is still a queen e5 move here. Queen e5, queen takes e5, rook takes e5. I think it would be a relatively easy draw. After rook takes f2, rook takes f2, e takes f2. King maybe even can take on f2, but maybe king f1 is even better. Well, let's just count king takes f2, rook takes b2 check, king f3. For example, rook takes a2, rook takes e6, rook takes h2, rook takes c6, and black has an extra pawn, but there is no way black will win this because the king is just too bad, cut off on the 6th rank, and white will have enough counterplay, and even without the counterplay it's an easy draw. Yeah, so that's white's decision, so I predicted it right. Queen e5 check, black already is forced to take, rook takes e5. Now black has a choice. I think it's better to take with the rook, not to give white many opportunities, because if black plays e take f2, white maybe can consider playing king g2, because the f2, you know, is already like that, so there's no way this pawn will survive. So white maybe can try to eat it later, not to lose the h2 pawn. But no, black plays e takes f2 and white misses this opportunity. But yeah, it's still a draw, so who cares? Yeah, king f3 is a good move. So you see, you never cut your king away. So king g1 was better in terms of material, but king f3 is much better, because even if we lose all the pawns, now our pieces are just too active. And in the rook end games, and in end games overall, and especially in rook end games, the activity of pieces is a huge factor. So in this position, black will not really have any chances to win. So let's go to some other games. Third game is already finished. In the fourth game, yeah, white made the right move. Knight takes h3. Black played knight d4. And white decides to play knight e3. This move looks strong because it defends the d5 square. So black's idea was to play bishop takes h3, and now white is forced to take the bishop because there is no more queen c6 move. Yeah, so white decided just to straight defend the d5 square. Black still takes on h3. Once again, it may be good if there is some dynamics. So maybe like queen d7, for example, now attacking the h3 pawn. Yeah, so that's the move. Well, this may be dangerous, you know. Maybe knight e3 was not as good. So what are white's options here? Of course there are some moves like e6, but that's too much, I think. Black maybe can just play knight takes e6. But maybe white don't have something better, really. Yeah, e6 is fine, I think. e6, knight takes e6, and now white has to create some counter threats. Maybe play like knight f5, for example. I don't know, very difficult position. Also, white has an option to play queen a4 here. I know that you know, people usually don't like exchanging too much, but queen a4 maybe really is solving all white's problems, because the exchange of queens is almost forced. So there is no c6 move because of e6. Well, I'm not really sure about this, because e6 can be made by queen takes a6, bishop takes b8, queen takes h3 check, bishop h2, bishop d6. So some complicated variations. f4, for example. Well, it's difficult to count all this, but who cares, because white just decides to play e6. I think this move is good. I think black don't really have a big choice here. Knight takes e6 is fine. Knight takes e6, and white will play, I don't know, knight f5 is interesting, but maybe it's not working. Oh, white could also play knight g4 instead of e6. I forgot about this move. Now there is still a queen a4 move, and it's still forcing the exchange. It will be very funny, because black has triple pawns on c file and black has double pawns on a file. But you know, it would be very difficult for black to not lose the c3 pawn, I think. But once again, all this needs to be counted, really. So let's leave this task to the players and look what happens in the other game. Yeah, in the other game, black managed to even not lose the h-pawn, so black decided to play c5 instead of taking on h2. So white played the h4, d4, and now rook c6. Yeah, this position is even more dry than it would be if black took on h2, because now if black wants to not lose his pawns, he has to play rook a4, and it's really an awful move with no winning chances. And if black will try to hang on his pawns, he may even start playing with fire, because white can surprisingly fight some mating threats by moving his king to g5, h6, I don't know, moving his pawns. So black is really not at risk in this position. So you see, for example, if black wastes some time, white can play h5, h6, move the king to h5, play g4, and then, like, you know, play rook c8 check, king will go to f7, rook h8, and if in some sort of scenario like this, black will lose h7 pawn, the position is already lost. I can't imagine the scenario when white will lose this game though. So I think at this point black has to stop playing for the win and just secure the draw. I would say until it's too late, but it's not too late in this kind of position. Black will have to make a lot of crucial mistakes to lose this. Let's go back to the fourth game. It looks more interesting. So white plays queen c4. I don't really understand the idea. Black played knight d4, and now white has to think of some way to defend the h3 pawn. And also there is a queen c6 check threat. It's not a huge threat right now because of queen d5, but at least it's on the cards now. I think that queen c4 was not a good move, but you see white has some time trouble. And when I'm talking about the queen c6 check being a potential threat, I mean that, for example, if white now defends the h3 pawn by playing knight g4, so the resource that I was talking about already, black will now have the queen c6 check. So you see the knight goes away and no more queen d5 move now. I think white's position is lost. I would say the only chance here is to play queen a4, because losing the h3 pawn is a disaster, because after this the f3 pawn is also under attack, so there is knight f3 move. Oh, king g2 is not really good. I think it obviously loses after rook g8. I don't know what white thinking. Maybe just he don't see some other ways. Yeah, rook g8 check for sure, knight g4, and I think black can just count rook takes g4. Yeah. So let's count it together. Rook takes g4, h takes. You see, black don't even think because it's just too obvious. King h1 will be met by queen f3 check and knight e2, and black will be forced to lose his queen. So he has to play bishop g3, but I think even this move is not making a huge difference, because I believe that black has some tactical way to end it right here, right now. For example, well, I don't know really, maybe it's not this easy. Yeah, maybe it's not this easy. The victory after h takes g3 is not this obvious, so black will for sure have material advantage, but we'll have to do some work until the position will become absolutely clear. Also, black can play queen e4 check, with the idea that if white plays f3, we will play queen g6, for example. Also, there are some more complicated ways to win, like for example, h3 check. Oh no, h3 check is not good. Maybe queen f3 check. Yeah, queen f3 check. Now, if white plays king g1, then we just play h3 and it's done. So black can choose between king h2 and king h3. The king h2 will be met by well, doesn't matter anyways. So black just decide to play it easy by just taking on g3. Of course, white has to play f takes g3. And yeah, at least the f7 pawn is attacked, so at least there is some counterplay, you know. And in fact, exchanging the queens is not securing a victory for black. I think the position will be not this easy to win. Surprisingly, white decides to play f3. I don't believe in this move. I think that's too much. White had to try to hope for some chances after f takes g3. But after f3, I think the g3 pawn is relatively strong. Queen h5 is a strange move though, because now oh no, it's not a strange move because rook h1 is met by queen takes f3. So yeah, the queen h2 is a dangerous threat. Yeah, queen h5 is a very good move in fact. So no more options for white. I think just to play king takes g3 and pray for if somehow there is no checkmate after this. But it has to be, I think. If not checkmate, then just some way to convert this position. For example, queen h4 check, king g2, and maybe like no, not even playing queen h4 check. I think just play king d7 and just create a space for the rook g8 threat. Or maybe there is some tactical way to finish this game. For example, bishop d6 check. I'm not sure. We have to count this. Bishop d6 will be met by f4. Also, there is a queen g5 move with the idea of playing queen after king f2, queen d2 check maybe. Now if king g1, we may think of knight e2 check. Maybe there is a checkmate there. Well, let's secure the draw in the second game. Yeah, it's a draw, as I thought. Black plays bishop d6 check. Of course, white has to play f4 because after king g2 there is a queen h2 checkmate. So let's see what black come up with in this position. Queen g5 check maybe? No, knight f5. Knight f5. Yeah, that's looking good. King f2, queen h2 check. Now king e1 is the only move, and black will maybe play just knight e3, and that's it. Oh, it's not the only move. White played king f3. White is trying to go for some sort of psychological attack. It's not going to be working though, I think. If I was black, I would just play knight e7 with the idea of f5 checkmate and also the pawn checkmate, insult to injury. Oh no, black even has... Oh no, I thought black has a straight checkmate, but I was mistaken. Oh, even knight d4, not knight e7. No, knight e7 was better, I think, because knight e7 was capturing the d5 square, and f5 was a checkmate threat. Now it's just a check threat, and then queen g2 after king d5. Still dangerous, of course. Rook e1. So if now black gives the f5 check, white will play king d5, and it's a check as well. I think f5 is still working. f5, king d5, king d7, and c6 is inevitable, I think. A lot of funny ways to end this game. Let's see what black chooses. King d7 is also... Oh no, king d7 is a blunder of queen takes f7. Still winning, of course, but no reason to do so. Yeah, f5. I think f5 is the best decision. f5, king d5, and just king d7, and that's it. That's funny. There is a c6 idea, and also queen g8, queen g2, a lot of checkmate threats, and even one of them, the c6 threat, can't be stopped. Oh, white can move his queen away, and after c6 we'll have the c4 square. But it's still not enough, because, for example, queen a4 check, c6, check, king c4, and now at least black can play rook b4 check, and easily win the game due to material. Queen a4 is only move, I think. To at least not be straight checkmated. Yeah, c6 now. And yeah, white resigns. That's it. I'm not reading the chat, I'm sorry. What did I miss? Well, my chat is not working, I guess. Or maybe you're talking about the YouTube translation. I don't even have a link to it. So I think it's time to ask what comes up next. So this part of match is finished. Let's ask for some further instructions. So we had these technical issues, so we can go back through the game, only forward. But you see, in the life, you always have to go forward and not look back. These issues, of course, will be solved for the next time. I'm also sorry that our translation was a little bit delayed. Had some personal issues. It's not happening anytime soon, so. Yeah, this game was. It's a real pity that white blundered this checkmate. This is sad. The position was interesting, and it was better for white. And one blunder, and it's all over. So let's talk with our coordinators. Look for support. So Kirill, what's next? Is he here? Already left? So let's ask him. Let's just call him. Hello guys, what's next?
It's still me only.
Yeah, I see.
By the way, who won?
Andrei is dodging our calls.
Yes, professionally.
Yeah.
So who won?
It's a very interesting question because I see only the nicknames of the players. Let's try to guess it. Well, in this game, Black is obviously from our team.
All the
so
blacks.
Black won. That's 1-0. In the second game, of course, our guy is playing for White. He won. Oh no, it's a draw. So 1.5 for MIPT. Yeah, Rozumovsky is also a MIPT student. So he lost. So it's a draw now. And I don't know who these players are.
I can try to guess it. I have
let's try it.
I have a list of players.
Do you see my screen?
Yes, the white here is from MIPT. And
yeah.
Yes.
And so he lost, and that means that the University of Toronto secures a victory in this match. 2.5 against 1.5.
Seems like so.
So congratulations.
Congrats.
A successful revenge. I hope it's not the last time we play this kind of matches.
Well, yes.
I think MIPT has something to say. So, Kirill, what are your thoughts? Did you like the games?
Well, yes, I did, but I'm as well confused by this Rook Divan
Rook Ivan?
or Ivan.
Yeah.
What was it?
Hello.
Yeah, that was surprising. Oh, hello, Андрей.
Hello.
Привет, Андрей. Ты с нами?
Да. Как впечатление?
Мы заканчиваем? Это последний этот? То есть не будет больше сегодня партии? Тогда сейчас я по красоте завершу. Okay, thanks to everyone who was watching. Sorry for some Russian parts in this international stream. So I hope it's not the last time that we are together broadcasting and spectating this game. So see you next time. Congratulations to the University of Toronto. Well played. GG. Bye bye.
So just to make it clear, I saw an external Uni VCWCL Ligio at 18th September, right?
А подожди, я закрыл уже стрим.
Да ладно.
Или ты уже вошел во вкус?
Я вошел во вкус, и свой-то я еще не выключил.
А, да? Ну, про что ты спрашивал?
Я видел в списке турниров на Личе, что будет 18 сентября, 3 июня VCL, WCL.
Так Андрюха же вот как раз говорил, что
Да?
что-то будем стримить через неделю. Я, правда, думал, что воскресенье. Точно 18-го?
Ну, как написано, да. А что, это не воскресенье, что ли?
Не, ну сегодня же 12
суббота.
воскресенье, значит суббота.
Суббота,
Странно,
да.
я, по-моему, Андрей говорил воскресенье.
Ну, не знаю.
Ну, арена будет 18 числа, а еще мы будем планировать турниры как 1 на 1 по воскресеньям, как сегодня был турнир, так и такого же плана, только другие турниры с другими университетами.
Угу.
Ну, в общем, я тогда завершаю стрим. Thank you for coming, our free viewers on YouTube. Goodbye, everybody. See you the week after.